Hey, Jabbers. Today we're talking about a slightly unconventional business topic, but something that matters more than you might think. We're talking about wellness, health, and the business connection. We have the pleasure of speaking with serial entrepreneur and wellness and mindfulness expert, Stephanie Uchima.
And before we ask Stephanie all these juicy questions, I want to tell you a little bit about her because I know her personally. So, after launching multiple companies, obtaining an MBA, MRED, consulting both individuals and major corporations for over 18 years, and working for multiple corporate and nonprofit organizations, once she became a mom, everything changed and she realized how important it was to take care of yourself on all levels. So, she left the corporate career to follow her intuition and embark on a mission to empower and help others redefine their identity in their personal life and improve their health and wellness so they can thrive in a business life or business and regular life. Stephanie has appeared on Forbes, NBC, WSJ, The List, Good Morning, La La Land, Brit & Co., Honeybook, and more. And she's spoken on many stages about entrepreneurship, working motherhood, podcasting, and wellness. So we are in presence of a great mentor, friend, and someone with a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah,
Oh,
amazing.
I'm
Welcome.
excited to be here, guys. Hi.
Yeah.
Thanks
I
for
feel like
joining
I've
us.
been
And
with you guys
where are
forever.
you joining from, Stephanie?
I'm in the beautiful sunny Los Angeles. I live by the beach here. I was actually born and raised here. Went away, but I'm back now raising my family.
I love it. And you just got a new office.
Yes. It's funny because I think aesthetics for me, I've taken a lot of those like personality quiz kind of like assessments. And it's not superficial to say, but aesthetics kind of are part of who I am. And it like really fuels me. And so being in an office that I absolutely love actually helps boost my productivity and my work. So it was a nice switch.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I agree. I had like a WeWork office for a long time and it was just nice to like get out of the house. You kind of felt like, oh, I have this big office to go to. And yeah, it's
Especially
just
with the
a
thing being a
change of
mom and
pace.
like looking around and being like, oh, I have laundry to do. I have this to
Oh,
do.
for
Like,
sure.
oh, I need to pay this bill. Like it detaches you, which is
Yeah.
way better for my productivity.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
I believe that. So, okay, Steph, can I call you Steph?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Um, so I shared a little bit about your bio, but basically what I want people to realize, because I know you personally and Kari knows you as well, is that when I first met you, you were a like diehard businesswoman, type A, has an MBA, is all about numbers, processes, and you were a go-getter, quote unquote boss babe, if we dare say. And one of my mentors early on in the event planning world when I lived in Los Angeles. And then we've always followed each other, kept in touch, and kind of for me out of nowhere realized that you had in fact started diving deep into health, wellness, intuition, mindfulness. And to be frank, you were the last person I thought would even dip your toe into that world. So what happened?
So it's funny you say that because I think a lot of people look at me and they're like, wait, what? I was a math and physics major. I was like numbers. I was business. I was real estate development because, I thought those were the paths like you had to take. And when you do sit in that sort of like role of the business person, I was raised in the 80s. So you take on this like, oh, I need to wear a suit and I need to work hard and I need to just, run up the corporate ladder. And that's the way you go. And then when I became an entrepreneur, because I happened to graduate when the economy crashed and there were no jobs, I had to make my own job. I realized, okay, I was like, okay, I was still hustling hard and doing, quote, what I thought I had to do. I mean, all the role models, if you think about back in the day, were like, corporate men in suits and all of that. And ironically, my background, my mom's a nurse and my grandma was actually a Buddhist priestess. So I grew
Oh
up
my gosh.
going to her house, which was like 5 minutes from me. We actually live in that house now, and she had a temple. She had all of these Buddhist statues. She was extremely holistic. She would feed me like, it was called green magma. I don't know. It was like some sort of like MLM back in the day. She would give me like protein smoothies and like green drinks and like carrot juice. And I was like a 5-year-old, you're like, what the hell is this? I don't know if I'm
Oh, you
allowed
can
to,
swear. Yes.
but
Fine. Yeah.
I grew up around it and I was like, what is this? And my mom was like in the health industry because she was a nurse and she was a cardiac nurse and like nutritionist. So she'd be giving me like oat bran O's and like all of this stuff. And I'm like, ugh. So I think I like avoided it. Like, when you like grow up with
Yeah.
stuff, you're like, I want nothing to do with it.
Mhm.
And I shunned it away. And then so I was on the grind, working my butt off, like thinking that's what you have to do. You have to burn the candles on both ends. You have to do it all. And I literally, my body collapsed. It shut down. So after having I guess before I got pregnant, I had issues. And a lot of it had to do with obviously like hormonal stuff and things like that, but also a lot of stress. And that continued, but I never really realized it because you kind of tune your body out. You're like, whatever, I'm just tired. Like work long hours. I'm just tired because I have a newborn. I'm just
You have
tired
more
because I have two kids.
coffee. You have
Yeah, drinking more
Celsius.
coffee.
Yeah.
You're still working out, you're quote trying to eat well, but you're not managing your actual like body, your stress, your mental load, all of that. And so I thought I could do it all. After I had my third kid in February of 2020, she's turning 4 this weekend. And then COVID hit. Suddenly, with all of this time, I started to like think about, I was like, oh, I should, maybe start getting back in shape. Like I'm done having kids. And one day I literally collapsed in pain. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what is this? I went to the ER and found out I had multiple giant baseball-sized tumors on my ovaries.
Oh my
And
God.
emergency surgery, middle of COVID, all of this. And that was my like physical wake-up call that whatever I was doing before wasn't working. And I mean,
Mhm.
I am like pretty fit. I eat healthy. Anyone who physically sees me doesn't think I'm quote unhealthy.
Mhm.
And I put those in air quotes because it doesn't matter what your appearance is.
Yep.
It's like, honestly, most of it has to do with how you're taking care of your mind and inside and everything else. So anyway, moving into like all the health and wellness, that was my wake up call. Like, if I want to be alive for my children and for, doing all these things and accomplishing all the things I want, I need to start focusing on that. And once I started to make that switch, I realized things started to fall like in alignment. Trust me, I had never meditated a day in my life before 2017. I had never even thought about breath work. I never thought about any of that stuff. But after honestly, it was just a shift in my whole like being that I realized like, wow, I'm unhappy. I'm unhealthy. Like something's got to give. And I just started on this like almost like spiritual journey.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I like picked up and I was like, I'm going to go to Maui on a retreat because I just need it. It's where my happy place is. And that's where the whole journey of starting to reinvent how I run businesses, how I look at life changed.
I mean, it's so crazy like hearing you say like before you were just kind of like, oh, I'm tired. And I think so often as entrepreneurs, even we're like, oh yeah, I'm tired, but so is everybody else. And it's like this mentality that you're like, just push through. I have work to do. And like you go about that, but that's like a repetitive thing, right? It's like day after day. You're like, just push through. You're fine. Like everyone else is pushing through and working hard. And it's such like a mindset shift to really listen to your body.
Well, and then also all of the like role models and mentors back in the day were really like, if you look at it, I mean, they're amazing people, but you look at who had the top business podcasts, who had, the top business coaching. They were all men. And I'm not saying like as a woman, it was hard to relate. And so you look at this hustle culture and it's like, great, but who's helping you behind the scenes?
Right.
Like, what support systems do you have? And so you start to unpeel that and realize, oh, wait, they have a full on support system that's helping them. So they have one job is to just focus on their business. But as a woman, we have many different things. And so I think for me was like really realizing like, wait, I got to do this differently. And how can I do that? And hustle culture did not resonate anymore with me. And I'm not saying being lazy, but picking things more in alignment. And it's just been an incredible experience since.
Well, I love that you say that hustle culture did not resonate anymore because I think we're all in this phase of our life that we're calling kind of slow entrepreneurship, where it's more intentional, it's more mindful. We're still working hard, but also it's okay if things come a little bit easier. And because we are so good at our jobs, or we've, gone to a certain level, it's okay if things come easier. Now, not to say that hustle culture for some people can be really effective. It can be really motivating. And don't get me wrong, there's days where I listen to podcasts that I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do that and I'm going to do that. But as Stephanie knows, sometimes I take to the extreme and I get overwhelmed with all the ideas. So I need to come back to intentionality, slowing down and thinking, okay, these are all ideas. Are they right for me? Or is there a rush for me to start these? Or let me start with XYZ. So I think to your point is, and this will kind of lead into one of my first questions, but intuition, being really in tune with yourself and knowing when it's a time to quote unquote hustle and when there's probably a time for rest and letting things happen or bringing things into manifestation, which I know you've talked about, and even crystals and breath work and that kind of stuff, which people can choose what they want to, incorporate in that sense. But all that to say, I guess, for you, what does it mean for you to follow your intuition when it comes to business? Like, how has it bettered your business? And what advice would you give to people who are wanting to follow their intuition, but they have no idea what that means?
I know it all sounds woo-woo when you're like, oh, I'm just going to manifest this and follow my intuition. And like, people think it's just like throwing things to the wind and it'll happen. This actually all started to evolve with, Gabby knows, like I call it shiny object syndrome. And it's like, how do you avoid that shiny object syndrome when you see it and you're like, I want to do this, I want to do this. And like, how do you know what's right? I think the first thing that I learned to do was really look inward and ask yourself a few questions. Like, what do I value? Like, what are your values? Because hustle culture might be part of your own value, or it might not be. Where are you in your stage of life? Like, do you have that time and the energy to commit to something like this? If say you are about to have a child, maybe it's not the best time for something. But if you have a little bit more freedom, your business is running well and you're looking to do something new, like maybe that's like the time to invest in it. It's like really assessing what your values are, time and place. And then also just like asking yourself, what do I want? Like, when I ask myself, like, do I want this? And the first feeling in your gut, like literally inside your gut is like, oh gosh, that sounds awful. Well, then maybe it's not in alignment and maybe you should ask yourself why. And I start asking myself, the question is like always like, why? So why did that not feel good? Why maybe is not right now, not the right time? Or why did I just get really excited? And I have no idea, like it just came out of nowhere, but I'm like, wow, that sounds amazing. And start to kind of internally ask yourself those questions. And that's kind of where I see intuition. I'm highly logical, but yet also woo-woo. So it's this like holistic logic where you do have to ask why, what, like, who is this going to work out right now? But then there's also that part of you inside that just kind of also knows. And that's like the cherry on top. So I always say, like, do the logical thing, but then really tap inward and just ask yourself, like, do I really want this? Is this right? And you'll know. And that'll push you in the correct direction. So that's how I follow my intuition, is I stop and take a moment and look inward.
Yeah, I think that's huge because I think we all have that gut feeling about a lot of things about our business, but sometimes we tend to not listen to it. And Steph, how do you feel like your business has changed by listening to your gut or incorporating more of those holistic practices?
Well, recently it's actually helped guide me to honestly like where I want to be right now, which is like in this, new office, podcasting. It has led me to wanting to dive deeper into wellness coaching. Like I'm going to now get a fully like certified board certification for it. But it's also led me to step back too in time. So I struggled a lot with the type A-ness. Like I have to keep achieving. Like I see my business school colleagues, we are now almost 15 years out of business school. They're presidents of companies. Like, why am I not there? And then I use that like holistic side to kind of tap in, like, wow, but that doesn't feel good. Like if I were to be the president of a big company right now, is that where I need to be right now? And it's not. So tapping into this actually gave me permission to take a step back from my business. So last year in 2023, I really took a step back to kind of analyze, one, like, am I going down a road that I don't want to go down? Two, what do I really want in this new stage of life? Like, three, is, just like lining your ducks up. A lot of times we just keep going for the sake of going because we don't want to give up something that we've worked so hard at, because it feels like, why do I want to start over? I mean, it's like any relationship. Like if you think about relationships, you invest so much time and effort and everything. And it's like, you might still love the person, but it's not right. It's not the right time or place anymore. And so same with the business. And for me, like, I love doing business strategy and I love consulting and doing that, but it just wasn't the right fit anymore for me. And I really saw a need more in the health and wellness industry. And so I think for me, it led me to where I need to be. And like, that was taking a step back, diving deep. And now I'm ready to take charge in 2024.
Well, and you have such a good balance of go-getter business person and realizing when it's time to do a check-in. And I think that is where entrepreneurs go to an extreme perhaps or another, and maybe that's when they feel out of balance and they're hustling more on one side, or they're quote unquote lazy and they're not taking the extra steps. Like, I love that you ask why. There's why, what, where, all the good logical questions, but also saying, okay, I'm feeling this. Let me not ignore that and just push through because my colleagues from school are presidents and I should be doing that. I mean, Kari and I talk about the comparison game in our day and age with social media is so extreme. But I love that you're making it, okay. And in fact, encourage to do a self check-in and say, oof, president in an office in a high rise sounds, no, that's going to be a no for me. And that's just as, our jobs or whatever our decisions are just as important as someone who took that high rise CEO job. So yeah, I love that. We talked about the hustle culture and kind of girl bossing versus intuitive business. Do you feel that there is a bit of a switch in the trends? Like, we had kind of a heavy few years of girl bossing and documentaries coming out and women empowerment, which like we're here for. But I'm almost seeing, and this is just based off social media and also in our friend group, I'm seeing a slowdown. And what do you think that is? Will it continuously ebb and flow in life, or are we just going through a season, or are people just trying to incorporate more and realizing hustle culture is just not something long-term that we can do?
I honestly think for everyone across the board, not just businesses, but you see this in education, you see this in like the youth, you see this all over, but really COVID, it brought out a real emphasis in mental health. And I think one of the first easiest things to do in combating mental health is to slow down. And so I see that as a trend. People were burning out. People were realizing they were unhappy in life. It gave you a real wake-up call when you slap something like a medical emergency, in your face. When you're faced with life or death, you start to really question, what am I doing with the time that I have? And so I see it, I don't think it's a trend. I'm actually glad. I think it's more of an awakening.
Oh, good.
And I think it's something that has always been there and we needed to focus on, but we chose to put second. And for the first time, we're prioritizing ourselves over, say, like, and I'm not bashing corporations at all. And I feel like bad that I keep like going on this, but like, if you think about it, as an employee of a company, you are doing this for the good of the company. And I think people are now switching that emphasis, and it's not being selfish. It's being like, honestly, protective of yourself and your value, is putting an emphasis on their own well-being. And I know now that's why corporations are starting to look at that. Like, how can you, as say, an entrepreneur, and say you do have employees and you are the person, how can we infuse more of this, like improving mental health and improving workplace culture and all of that? Because all of that's tied to productivity, stress management. I see that across the board. And honestly, like, I would love to even like talk with corporations on how they can incorporate a more holistic like business model. It's not about giving your, employees gym memberships, because like that's all superficial. really at the root of it is like people really understanding like themselves, how to manage it and how to kind of like what their own practices are. And for me, a lot of this started, and again, a little woo-woo, but really with meditation. I know it's hard for a lot of people. It was impossible, I thought, for me. So I started slowly. I started in 2017 with 5 minutes a day with like the Calm app, or Simple Habit, and just doing like a guided one until I really decided I was ready for it. I kept hearing about transcendental meditation, but again, gut, something didn't feel right about it. I know celebrities did it. And
Wait,
so like,
can you tell us what that is? Is that the sounds?
so transcendental meditation is a mantra-based meditation. A mantra is a saying that you say over and over that has no meaning, but it's just like a repetitive thing. So it's like you don't attach meaning to it, and therefore, you're not thinking like, oh, that evokes a certain emotion. It's literally like a mindless phrase. And you meditate for 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. And that's what like all the gurus were doing back in the day. That's what a lot of the actors and actresses do. It was the fad, but that didn't, like, something didn't sit with me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up discovering Deepak Chopra and doing his meditation, which did make more sense. And it was more personalized, kind of a similar thing, mantra based, but I started slowly and calming my mind and really being able to even be with your thoughts or just taking that silence has really helped kind of like ground me and help me think more clearly. It's also, apparently, my parents always joke, they're like, I don't know how you do it with all 3 kids screaming around you. I mean, my kids are almost 4, 5, and 8.5. And like, it's wild at my house. And my mom's always like, you're so calm. And I'm like, I'm able to like tune it out, but it's because of a lot of the mindfulness practices, but that is so good in business too. Like it's so good in the workplace to be able to learn how to manage your stress.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I know, Gabby, you kind of mentioned like girl bossing, but I feel like this is something that's like across the board, right? Like men and women can find these like intuitive, business practices as well. And do you work mostly with women, Steph, or
I personally
have you worked with any men?
I've worked with like a male, but honestly, for me, my heart is with women because I felt like I grew up in a time where like it was very male dominated business. And so like for me, I focus on female entrepreneurs, female executives. That's just my own sweet spot. But it's funny, one of my close friends, she's a tarot card reader, and she was not that before. She literally was the COO of a tech company, and tarot was like her side passion. And she embraced this. And honestly, she coaches mainly males. And it was interesting. We were actually having a conversation about this. And I think a lot of times for men, they're afraid to tap into this because it might seem too like alternative, and they have to put on this front. And when in reality, they realize like once they start tapping into these kind of practices, they become better leaders, and they also just like their businesses improve. And so then they get addicted to this, like, what is all of this? But if you look at it right now, most of major meditation or mindfulness people out there, you look, it's like Jay Shetty and Deepak Chopra, and they're all men. So there are a lot of role models and mentors for men to like look at, to like learn more about the practice. I focus on women because I really have a deep desire to help women. And I think so often women are not able to speak up for themselves, especially when it comes to their wellness. They're either gaslit. Oh, because honestly, we're the only people who have hormones that change like literally by the day. Like, I mean, sometimes men get a little bit, like my husband, sometimes I'm like, oh, are you like, I was like, you don't get a period, but like, I mean, you're kind of like PMSing here. But like for women, there are ways to even sync your cycle to your work ethic. And like, I'd be so much more curious. You have to interview someone on that because
that's it. No, that's funny because this is literally one of the topic ideas that Kari and I have talked about, being like this concept of hormones and business, and how there's got to be a strategy to it on like your peak decision making days.
I've listened to a few people speak on it because I mean, if you think about it, like when you're in a certain phase of your cycle, all you want to do is like sleep and rest and like
Right.
eat warm soups and nourish your body. And like, that's a time in your business to rest. But then I think it's like leading up to ovulation or something. You're like energetic. So get shit done. Like be the hustler. Like there's again, time and a place for everything. It doesn't have to be 24/7. And so I think the reason I'm so interested in women is there are so many more dynamics about us, but there's so much also medical gaslighting. It's like, oh, you're just tired because you blah, 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 or, oh, like just take this pill or do this. And like, it affects our job. Like I'm actually genuinely curious on statistics of women who were laid off for things for different things that were out of their control, but they were really just like gaslit because no one understands the like inner dynamics of women wellness.
100%.
So that's why I focus on
that's
it.
Fascinating.
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, if there are men listening, I think we probably will have a more, you know, female audience, but for men listening, I've gone down and I would consider this part of it, but a deep kind of rabbit hole of biohacking and all of the really like Andrew Huberman, who is a manly man who men will probably connect with a little bit more, but he talks about both very scientific things on how your brain and connectivity and your gut to brain connection, which I know, Stephanie, we could have a whole other conversation about brain and gut connectivity.
My favorite part of the body, the vagus nerve.
Yes. So, you know, that kind of stuff I think is at least being talked about more. And that's the whole, you know, what I'm personally excited. I'm sure Kari, you are too, but like we're not just talking about 3 tips to find your ideal client. You know, we're not 3 ways to grow on social media. We're actually saying, hey, actually take care of your whole being and watch what happens. You might have better ideas because you have clearer thinking. You might start waking up earlier and get more done. Therefore, your productivity increases. Like so many things that I think people disregard because they just think, you know, and don't get me started on the whole, like have to sit in an office from 9 to 5. I think that's a big reason why we're all entrepreneurs. But our brains don't all work well in that setting. And we are not as productive at those same times of day and therefore on our cycle for women and stuff like that. So I just think, I mean, this could be a 12-hour episode just talking about that kind of stuff, but I am fascinated by this whole concept of biohacking and just really taking care of yourself is the end goal here, taking care of yourself to be better in business.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they always say like put your oxygen mask on first. And that was for self-care before you help others, but it goes with the same thing. Like, I think we've moved beyond, we're talking about trends. We've moved beyond the self-care, like I think fad or trend. So I think like self-care, it's not that it's obsolete, but that's no longer, it's deeper than that now. And I think that's where we're headed. So self-care was like the stepping stone to get to where we are now.
Agreed.
And it might, I feel like even self-care was coming across to a lot of people as like a Band-Aid, right? Where it was like baths and like, you know, these things that they were like, I'm not feeling better, you know, I like do these things, but it is like, it's like deeper than that. It's like whatever self-care looks like for you, but like going deeper and actually listening to your body and taking care of yourself.
But it's funny you mentioned like Andrew Huberman and that sort of thing, because one of the things that I'm really interested in is interviewing more people about, like, for example, intermittent fasting. That was a fad. And, you know, my husband was like, oh, it's so good for you, blah, blah. And I kept telling him, I was like, no, like for women, you're not supposed to do that. Like, there's just a difference in the way our bodies work compared to men. And so it's interesting to see also like, okay, so maybe intermittent fasting might work in certain capacities. And then when does it give you the best productivity, or like, how does that help? And I think it's interesting when you're saying like biohacking yourself for your business, because that's also like something I'm fascinated by, is just like, how do you, like, it's not about working harder and taking more time. It's like, how can you work the most efficiently in the least amount of time so you have the time to enjoy and pursue your passions, which is why, like, Gabby, for example, I love how she's like pursuing all these things that bring her joy, from sourdough making to, you know, her horses to pickling, like learning about all these things that Gabby's doing in between these moments of like working hard and working on her business. it balances you out so much more. Because can you imagine your life without those?
Oh my God, no. And this is a perfect segue because I was like, I want to just touch on my experience with you, Steph, because it's not what I thought I was signed up for, but it is 100% what I needed. So to give you guys a quick recap, I voice texted Stephanie one day in the
It was on
car.
like Thanksgiving or some
Yeah.
holiday, like
It was
major
a holiday.
holiday. And I was like, is this like a spam? What is this?
Because that's when we have the most time to think because everything's closed and we're not working. So I like kind of voice texted her, which several run-on sentences, which when it came out to her, she was like, this sounded panicked. And it probably deep down inside was a panic text. But basically, I was looking for support, what I thought at the time was business support, mentorship, something to help me like get unstuck. And when it came down to it, and Stephanie was like, I obviously do business, coaching, but there's a big spin on wellness and I talk about health. I'm like, that sounds great. That sounds really lovely and holistic. And maybe I need that. So I signed up with her and we talk every 2 weeks for 6 months and we still have a few sessions and I'm like ready to renew because I don't want it to end. But basically what I didn't realize was it was not in fact business tips that I needed. It was truly like deep inner work that we needed to talk about. And call it therapy for some. This was my perfect blend. This was my perfect take on therapy because she asks those questions. Why do you feel good or bad about that decision? And then we talk about it. And I have some realizations on our call all the time, like, I didn't realize I'm saying this out loud, but I tend to be this way, or I tend to react instead of process things slowly. And so I therefore still got incredible business tips on how to be a better leader, like, breath work before answering some emails that trigger me, or knowing that I have this list in my notebook of 20 things that bring me instant joy, that if I'm in a shit mood, I can go to this notebook and be like, oh yeah, working with my hands instantly brings me joy. Let me go garden or let me play with some plants, whatever. So I was really pleasantly surprised that in fact this did help my business. And we did, in fact, a couple sessions, we talked numbers. We did like crunch some numbers, found some break-even points. And so you are the perfect person for this stuff because you have the knowledge, you have the entrepreneur business knowledge. You're not just not to dismiss this, but like not just a tarot card reader. Like you have this proven MBA and background, but you've also, transformed yourself and are proof of listening to your gut, trusting your intuition, manifesting, all that kind of stuff has better your business and yourself. So I just, want to share my experience because it really was transformative. And I look at my notebook every so often and be like, oh yeah, we talked about how I react with this. That's a trigger for me. Let me restart or stop or do breath work or whatever that is.
Exactly. Stop.
Stop. Yeah, that's one of her methods. It's called stop.
One of the things that I think Gabby really got from this is awareness. And there was something that I think way back in the day, I don't know if it was one of my mentors or something that I heard that always stuck with me, is you can't see the label on the jar from the inside. And so when I started doing my business, like coaching and strategy, it was really to like step outside your business, looking in like me as an outside perspective, helping you read the label on the jar. But really, as it's evolved, I realized, no, like it's stepping out of the jar of who you are. And so I get to see Gabby from the outside and ask her questions like, what's on the inside there and why? Because she's not going to take out every ingredient unless she's asked. And so that concept of like, you need like that mirror, someone to kind of talk to. And I don't think it's there. I mean, I'm glad it's therapeutic to you, but my goal isn't to do therapy because I'm not a licensed therapist.
Right.
However, so that's why I was like, disclaimer. Not a therapist, but I am that mirror to like ask you the questions to make you think about like your own self. And like most of the realizations and things come from you. And like, and it's amazing, the awareness and all.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think the thing is in traditional business coaching, let's call it, that's not what they're focusing on, right? They're very, I don't know what the word would be, but they're very much focused on strategies and ways to be more productive and to, you know where I'm going with
More
this, but
sales.
yeah,
Yeah.
more
Mhm.
sales and that kind of stuff. And
Very
so
tactical.
very
Yeah.
tactical, yeah. But I think the tactics don't work for every type of individual. So we have to first figure out how do we work well and how do we not work well? And based off of that, then to your point, awareness, now we can start to build some strategies and think, okay, this is going to be a better way for me to work. Therefore, my employees will be happier, or, whatever, even if you're just one single person, how you interact with vendors or a fellow team member, whatever that is. So, yeah, this was completely, honestly new to me, and I quite enjoyed it.
And I would
Yeah.
say is you helped me develop this whole new look on like holistic business coaching, because I thought I was coming in just doing health and wellness, but I love the business aspect. So you helped me understand that. So I also think this works really well if you have a client focused business. And so if you're selling online courses or digital products, like, yeah, holistic kind of business coaching and working on this. Obviously, everyone, I think it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or not, needs to work on their own health and wellness and their own practices. But where I find, and that's why like Gabby is the perfect fit for something like this, is when you're working with clients and vendors and your business is really like customer service focused, it's really important to like understand those triggers within you, the awareness, because it'll prevent you from from taking on clients that you just can't stand.
Mm-hmm.
You can see kind of emergencies in the future. So it helps you to stop and really assess, like, should I take on this client? It seems a little difficult. Something in my gut doesn't feel right. Let's look through like logically here, like all of their parameters, say like for a wedding, like this bride and groom seemed great when they emailed you, and then you talked to them and something just didn't feel right. And then you were like, well, okay, maybe I'll just charge them a little more. Cause this is what I used to do. I
Yeah.
used to put like not an FU tax, but like if you're willing to work with me
Pain in
tax
the ass
on it,
tax.
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Like I will
Mhm.
slap on this. And if you're
Yeah.
willing to pay it, then I'll put up with you. And I do not suggest that anymore. And like, because every single time those would be the clients, I'm like, I really don't want to work with you, but I'll say yes.
Yeah.
And then, flash forward 8 to 10 months to their wedding, and you're like dying because they've been so stressful. You have like 100 new gray hairs and it's
Yep.
just like terrible. And had you said no to that and had those boundaries in place, the perfect client might have come in like 2 weeks later. And
Yeah.
you didn't allow those boundaries to be in place. And you also didn't allow that space for something good to come in. So it was almost working from like this scarcity mindset of like, I need to say yes to the client because I need this account or I need this. When in reality, if you just took a deep breath, maybe like, meditated on it, took a walk, like really thought through it, and then tapped into your intuition, you would have said, okay, no, I'm going to say no. But one of my mentors also said no also means next opportunity. It doesn't mean no, you didn't close the door. Instead, you opened the door to something else. And I think that's really important for client focused businesses is they get so like not greedy, but like this, oh no, if I don't take this client, like I might not get another one. But if you
Yeah.
expand and open your mindset, you will call in those.
And I think that's a good reminder too, when we feel like even if they are the perfect client and then, they ghost you or you just never hear back from them, and like kind of accepting like maybe they weren't the right fit for me either, if they're like not willing to respect my time or respond to me, and kind of letting that opportunity go for like another one to come to, versus like you having a gut feeling about the client not being a fit. Cause I feel like Gabby and I talk about that. Like, some clients are like, that was an amazing call. This is going to be so great. And then you never hear from them again. And I think also like being able to let that go as a business owner and being like, you know what, something else better is going to come along. And Stephanie, what would you say are like 3 things that you would share with listeners that they could tap into their own like intuition or wellness to help them in their business?
Well, I think to start, the number one is it's always like allowing for space and silence. So I would say like on a day-to-day, take like one moment. And I tell this to Gabby all the time because, you know, you're on back-to-back calls or you're driving around, but do you have like 1 minute? Because I know you scroll social media. I know you do all these other things. We live in a constant state of fight or flight, which is your sympathetic nervous system. I mean, think about every single time your phone dings, an email pops up. Doesn't matter if it's a good or bad. It's like that, like the feeling that comes up. It's like attending to something. So that's your fight or flight. And it always keeps coming up. And if you're constantly on that, you're stressing out your body. So take a moment every single day. It could be like 1 minute to activate what's the opposite of that, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and restore. So just like take a moment, close your eyes. And the simplest thing is my favorite is just the box breath. It's breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, holding for 4, and just repeating that. Don't even have time with that. Just close your eyes, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And maybe do a couple cycles of that. It's maybe what, 15 seconds at that point? It's like maybe less time than you're sitting at a red light.
Yeah.
Just to activate that other nervous system to kind of help restore your body. And that will internally help your own wellness. It'll also help create a little silence. It will create a little space. And all of a sudden, maybe after that moment, you're like, huh, I'm calmer. Oh, wait. Like, an idea might come through, or that gut that you're quieting yourself so that you can feel that like gut intuition of like, yeah, you know, that call I just had, I don't think I want to sign that client. So just doing that.
I love that.
And then I guess, sorry, 3 things. So
That's
my
a one.
second one
Okay, if
is-
you don't have 3 things.
number 2, I think, is an exercise of journaling. I talked about this before, but writing down your values. So in our business, a lot of times we, again, say yes to certain things, but they might not be in alignment. And when I say alignment, I mean like our values, because you want to hustle or you want to work hard doing something that motivates you and that like fuels your why. Like, you are more likely, and especially in your health and wellness, to make lasting change and to change things if it really resonates within you and your why. And if you don't know what your own values are and you're out of alignment, then things don't really fall into place. And like manifesting is really just about like that whole everything kind of working out and dreaming, because you're aligning yourself with what you want. You're aligning yourself with your values. So take a moment in your day, if you haven't, to like jot down what you value or what brings you joy, like what Gabby does. And once you have that list, take a moment in your day to just glance at that. So anytime you're stressed or anything, you're like, what brings me joy? Making sourdough bread. Like, how can I do that this weekend?
Yeah.
And then I think lastly, hire a coach, just kidding. But
I mean, true.
is for me personally, and I know this is said in a lot of entrepreneurship stuff, but how you start your day is so important. So every single day, think about what is your morning routine, like your morning ritual. It doesn't have to be long. It could be a 5-minute morning ritual. How do you start your day? Do you start your day with your alarm clock blaring? You hit snooze, your alarm clock blares again. You look at social media. Now you're in that fight or flight mode. So now you're stressed out. Instead, like, how can I wake up more intentionally? So making that effort to wake up a certain way. So is it you wake up, drink a glass of water, go brush your teeth, and while you're brushing your teeth, just feel the bubbles, like taste the taste of mint in your mouth. Like, that is being mindful. You're just being in the moment and being present. Open your blinds or step outside, get some sunlight. That's like 30 seconds each or whatnot. Maybe brushing your teeth a minute. And then move on with your day. Then you can check your emails, drink your coffee, or when you're drinking your coffee, like feel it, like, oh, is this warm? How does it smell? Activate all of your senses. And that can be done honestly in little time, but setting yourself up for success when you first wake up is really important. And I'm saying this as a mom of 3, and I know how difficult that can be. So you can make all the excuses in the world, but I promise you it's possible.
Yeah. And that is also good for those that are new to kind of intuition and they're not sure, they're dipping their toes, they're feeling it's maybe a little, they're not sure if it's right for them. Productivity, just think of the outcome of starting your day without your cortisol shooting up and you're, starting calmer, your mind is clear, drink some water, take a few deep breaths, look outside. And even Andrew Huberman talks about getting like sunshine in your eyes early
Mhm.
morning. That's just your circadian rhythm
Yeah.
that
Yes.
kicks in. Like it's just a true sunrise to sunset, and your body needs to know that it's actually light outside. So, yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing those tips. And we'll be sure to write all of those in the show notes so that people can kind of follow along. And we have a final question before we wrap this up.
Yeah. I something I guess we want to kind of ask everybody at the end of the show, but sort of knowing what you know now in your business, what advice would you give to your younger self, like starting a business, or even if someone is, 5, 10 years in their business and still kind of struggling on like what's next for them? What's something that you've kind of realized for yourself that you would give advice for?
I think looking back at the past, honestly, the biggest tip I would give is relationships, is maintaining those business relationships, is really collecting your people. I think the biggest successes I've seen come from kind of like your network and all of that. And I know, I'm not just talking like go out and network, but like Gabby, I've known forever. And we met because I said yes to an opportunity for coffee. And that just, we built on that. And I think for my younger self, I would have put myself out there a little bit more and started to, I guess, like collect people that, we could help each other. And the one thing that I was like taught in the past that I still do is like, I don't just like ask for things, I help first. And so I'm always giving before receiving. And that's just even with the universe, what you give is what you get. And so with those people, invest, and the returns will be amazing in the future. And so I think for those who are just starting out, meet as many people. But if you meet those people that, again, you'll know, like you meet some people like you, I mean, even going on a first date or something, and you're like, not for me. And so like go out, meet people, and those people who like in your gut, you're like, that's a good person. Like I should probably just keep in touch with them, do that. And you never know what's going to come out of that. You might find a best friend, or you might find $1 million contract. Who knows?
Yeah.
But keep your mind open and expansive.
Oh, I love that. I know we'll have to have a whole conversation about deeper connections, Kari,
Yeah.
because today's networking is kind of wild out there. People don't really know how to talk. That's not small, superficial conversations. And I feel like we could go on and on about that. But
Right.
this was amazing. We learned
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you.
I think we are going to get a lot of questions about what you do and where people can find you. So, Stephanie, please tell us what's the best way to work with you and what's the best way or place to keep up with you.
Well, you can find me. I'm pretty much on every medium. My name is Stephanie Uchima, and you can find me. It's UCHIMA. And you can find me on Instagram, my website. You can also listen to my podcast. If you're a mom, it's not necessarily geared only towards moms, but it's called Mommy's on a Call. Like, like when you yell, like, Mommy's on a call, shh,
Love
doing
it.
That's
business
good.
or I'm doing something. It's also like Mommy's on a Call with wellness, like yourself and different aspects. I've had that podcast for 4 years now. It's a top rated podcast. So go to iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. That's Mommy's on a Call, and you can find me there and you can connect. I guess DM me. I'm open to DMs, and I would love to hear more about you. Like, what did you take away from this episode? So yeah, love to connect.
Yay. Well, thank you so much. We'll put all of this in the show notes and connect with you guys on our DMs as well.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much for having
Stephanie.
me.
Okay, wait, how do I stop it?
Okay.
Up here.